I caught the perfect Galarian Moltres with RNG Manipulation. But here's the catch. I haven't actually performed an RNG Manipulation before, but after stumbling upon a video from Blissey, it sounded like an interesting way to hunt for rare Pokemon. So I decided to give it a shot myself. Join me today as I go over my experience and how I learned to RNG Manip to catch the perfect Galarian Moltres in Pokemon Sword. Before we begin, I'd like to say that this is not a comprehensive guide on how to RNG manipulate Pokemon. If you're looking for something like that, I'll link Blissey's wonderful channel below. I followed their guide to perform this manipulation, and I'll be explaining the steps I took and the way I understand them, but this is not going to be very in-depth or technical. Now that that's out of the way, we can ask what makes the perfect Moltres. I plan to use this Moltres as a special attacker, so ideally I want the attack stat to be as low as possible to minimize damage from foul play or confusion. Moltres can't be shiny as these birds are shiny locked but not mark locked, so on my perfect Moltres I'm going to be looking for a personality mark. Now if you're only looking for a low attack IV Moltres or a marked Moltres, it's actually super easy to reset for one. After visiting the big tree and spawning the birds, every time you fly to the Isle of Armor you'll be resetting the Moltres that spawns. So what you can do is fly to the Isle of Armor dojo, Moltres is already spawned and will stay the same until you reset it by flying again, and then you want to quickly move to this spot and save the game before the encounter. Now you can just throw a Master Ball to catch the bird quickly and check its stats or its mark. Then you can just soft reset. If it's what you're looking for, you can catch it normally, or if it's not, just fly to the dojo and repeat the process. But if I'm hunting for a personality mark and a low attack IV, resetting is going to be very time consuming. The odds of any personality mark with a mark charm is 3 in 100, and the odds that my attack IV is in an acceptable range is 1 in 16. Additionally, I wasn't hunting for just any personality mark. If I was going to RNG Manip, I wanted something fitting for a Galarian Moltres like the Intense mark or the Angry mark. Now that we have our target, it's time to begin the setup for the hunt. The first step in RNG Manipulation is to find our initial seed, which is the base value that's used to calculate random numbers and is determined when you boot up the game. This is done by entering your Pokemon summary screen, pressing the right stick, and observing the animation played, whether it's a physical or special attack animation. After doing this 128 times and entering the results into this tool, I'm able to find my seed. I like to think of the seed as a random path that we spawn on and the tool as a map. After taking 128 steps on this path and observing our surroundings, the map can be used to determine where we are. I couldn't figure out how to record everything at once, so instead I'm going to be demonstrating with my recorded gameplay. But once we find our initial seed, we can actually start looking for Pokemon. You'll need to fill out the fields on the left here, and anything in the middle is going to be additional filters to help you narrow your search. Galarian Moltres counts as a static encounter, has a locked ability, and is shiny locked. It also has 3 guaranteed IVs because it's a legendary. For filters, I'm going to be looking for an attack IV of 3 or under, and I'll be searching for any personality mark, but only be considering certain ones. As you can see, the tool will tell us where our perfect Moltres can be found. We get a result here for frame 40,924, which is very far away. That means if Moltres is spawned by using the random numbers at this frame, we would expect Moltres to have these stats. But how do we get Moltres to spawn on that frame? Well, we already know how to advance frames. Whenever we were playing the animations on the summary screen, each press used a new frame to determine the animation played. Other random events like what moves a wild Pokemon will use, the movements of NPCs, or even exiting menus will advance frames. For overworld encounter manipulation, usually you just stand outside the spawn radius of a Pokemon, so when you take a step forward, you spawn the Pokemon on the next frame. You want to avoid RNG advances or you'll spawn the wrong Pokemon and miss your target. Some of these advances are unavoidable but can be accounted for, like closing the menu. But Moltres is spawned when we fly, not when we take a step forward, so we'll need to do something a little bit different here. What I did is I flew to the dojo and rechecked my frame. After flying, I was about 100 frame advances from where I was before, meaning Moltres should have been spawned using one of those frames in between. To find out what frame Moltres used, I checked my position and flew to respawn Moltres again. I would then capture the Moltres, check how many frame advances ahead had the stats that matched the Moltres I caught, and I would repeat this process of checking my initial seed, catching the Moltres, and checking the frame a couple of times, making sure to control some factors like how I was always riding my bike and how quickly I flew to my location, because I'm fairly certain having the map open will also advance RNG frames. After a few tries, I found out that using this method, Moltres typically used frame 32 to determine stats. Each time I tested it, I had to refine my initial seed, but I used this program on my computer to type the inputs for me while I just pressed the button. Then I copied and pasted the results into the original tool. I found out about this program from a video by JengaBlocks, link will also be in the description. So once again we find our initial seed and we should be ready to hunt Moltres. We know that we want to be 32 frames behind our target frame that we want the Moltres to spawn on. In this case, there's the Moltres 40,924 frames away, so we want to advance 40,892 frames. Then we can fly and hopefully encounter our desired Moltres. Luckily, this Moltres actually has 2 frames where it can spawn with our desired stats, so the timing is going to be a little more lenient. To advance the seed, you need random things to occur. There are better ways to do this, but I basically just used guess and check. I would just play the game and occasionally check my position since the advances were so far away. After a few jumps, I could get a feel for how far I was advancing and had some control over it. I ran around and battled Pokemon or visited dens, and once I got within about 1,000 frames, I would just begin to fly to the dojo over and over, and once I got even closer to my target, I would just manually advance by playing the attack animation in the summary screen. So now we're 32 frames behind where we want to be, so it's time to fly. Here I move my cursor as fast as possible and fly and immediately save. Now, when we encounter our Pokemon, we can just catch it with the Master Ball, check its stats, and if it's not the Moltres we want, we'll just have to start this process over again. As you can see, this Moltres stats match our target frame, so we found the right one. Now all we have to do is reset the game, and I can catch it in my usual luxury ball. Before I end this video, I'd like to say that the results were not achieved on the first try, but I think with more experience, that this process would be a lot easier. If I tried this again, I think it'd probably take less than half an hour to an hour to complete. I actually only figured out that having the map open advanced to the RNG after catching Moltres, so I think if I knew it during, it would have made things a lot easier. I'm also not 100% sure if my understanding on Moltres spawning is correct, because after completing the hunt, I saw in Amablissy's Discord that you can actually manipulate after you land with certain timing, but I didn't know about it so I didn't try. If anyone would like to correct anything I say in this video, feel free to leave a comment below, but that's going to be all for this one. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, I'd really appreciate it if you left a like and subscribe to the channel. I don't know if I'll do any more RNG manipulation, but I do post Pokemon related content here, and I'd appreciate it if you checked it out. But until next time, bye bye!